Welcome back to Big Dan's Airgun Reviews. Today we're going to be looking at something that's a little bit different. We're going to be looking at a PCP from Cometa. This time we're taking a look at the Cometa Orion SPR. This is also the regulated version, as you can tell by the little cap on the end there. As always, we're going to be taking a look at the rifle when it comes to performance, accuracy, power, and also specifications and features. So let's get this show on the road and let's see what you get when you order your Cometa Orion SPR. So features, what do you get with your Orion SPR? Starting off at the rear, you get the expected rubber recoil pad with a rifle of this sort of caliber and price. Slightly further on, we have the adjustable cheek piece. Now that you might not have been expecting straight out of the gate. The stock is also ambidextrous, as you can see there. We'll be looking at, this is obviously the left-handed side, what you're looking at here, or what a lefty would be most friendly with, and it's not too bad at all. The studs actually sit inside of the stock, if you can see that lock that cheek piece in place, so it shouldn't really be too much of a problem when you're putting the rifle or stock to your cheek. Slightly further still, you can see you've got a nice bit of checkering in there, which is quite nice and deep. The camera, the lighting's a bit iffy, so you might not be getting the most out of it, but we'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the handling section. The rifle is a bolt action, as you can see there, which once again we'll talk a bit more about when we get to handling. Slightly further down we have the two-stage adjustable trigger. The trigger can be adjusted with, hopefully you can see there's the screws just inside of the trigger blade there, but we'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the handling section. And interestingly, carrying on with the whole ambidextrous nature of this gun, the rifle uses a bar type safety with both sides of the bar protruding either side of the trigger blade. It's not just one little toggle sitting down pretty much dead center of the blade. It is a proper, you could say, 100% ambidextrous safety, which is a bit odd, but also very nice to have. You've got a bit more checkering further up front with the Orion logo nicely finished in there. And above this, you have got Cometa's cold hammer forged barrel, which, as you know, we're going to be putting that through its paces a bit later on. You also have a barrel band installed that comes as standard with the rifle, which I'm frankly a big fan of, and I know they're a bit Marmite with some people. And as you can see, it's upside down at the minute because that's actually the dust cap on there where it's got S2 regulated, but she is the regulated version of the rifle. So you will get the Robert Lane regulator as standard fitted to the gun. Slightly further up, we have got the silencer as well, which comes with the SPR, which we will be doing a little bit of testing on a bit later, have a few shots in the handling section, and we'll have a listen, see how loud or quiet this really is. The best feature of all, thanks to ASI, you do also get a lifetime warranty with the gun. So depending on if it's any good or not, as the name implies, it's not just a rifle for a couple of years then you throw it in the bin like some of them out there. This is a rifle for life. One last little feature which almost slipped under the radar, the rifle even comes with sling studs fitted as standard. So you can fit a bipod on the front end if you want, or you can fit that sling and off you go. So overall, you've got a pretty feature-filled rifle, but of course that doesn't mean much if nobody can shoulder the thing. So let's get the scales out and see how heavy she is. Okay, so we have the scales out and she comes out at 7.56 pounds. So about average for a PCP or spring rifle. It's a middleweight, shall we say. So let's put the thing to the shoulder now and see just how that weight and balance affects how it truly feels. Before we get to the handling, however, we're going to look at how you load these mags because they are a little bit tricky compared to some of them. Now, first thing you're going to want to do is you take the plate on top of the mag and you spin the plate around anti-clockwise, as you can see there. And whilst holding pressure on the plate, what you're going to do, you're going to notice that you can't load the first pellet through the top because it's being covered off by that little rubber sort of toggle in there. What you're going to do is grab a pellet and load it skirt first through the rear. And what that will do is it will lock the magazine in place because that toggle is being held in position by that pellet that we've just loaded through there. And then what you do after that is you simply load the rest of the pellets straight through the top like so. Oops, sorry, had that out of camera. Load the rest of the pellets straight through the top like so until basically, oops, keep dropping them. Apologies. This is why I like my spring guns. You see, you just drop it in the breech and off you go. Yeah, you load the rest of them through the top like that until the mag is loaded. Simples. But how do we put it in the gun? Because that's a little bit strange, as you can see there. Well, you do it just like this. So what you're going to want to do, as with most PCPs, bolt back. And what you'll see with the mag, as we may have mentioned before, you've got two teeth on the bottom of the mag here. You simply slide this into the breech and you'll probably have noticed that there's a bar on the side of the action. If you can see that there, and you can probably already see what's going to happen. Those teeth or jaws are going to straight into that bar. So now it's locked in place, that's going nowhere. So if you're ready to have a go, close the bolt. That was bloody smooth too. And you're pretty much then ready to rock and roll. Now, we're going to have a chat about balance and such first. Now, the gun came out at around 7.5 pounds, so about a middle weight. And to be fair, we've got a fairly hefty scope on here. It is well balanced. It's the Konus Pro 550 4-16x50 scope. Hopefully you can see it's a fairly big lump on there. And it does still come up really quite nicely. Now, the rifle's not a featherweight. It's, as we said, middle. But in fact, actually, tell you what it reminds me of, when you've got it to your shoulder, imagine an Air Arms S410 with a little bit more heft to it. It's a little bit like a more curvaceous S410 to bring to your shoulder. Balance-wise, it feels, oh, you can see it's dipping down now, it's pretty much dead on, if you can see that. It's still tipping back a tiny little bit, but if I move my palm any closer to the trigger guard, well, it's not going to move anyway, is it? Because it's going to be stopped by my palm. So it's almost dead center of the gun. Pretty damn good, it must be said. It does come up really quite nicely. Now, what I am going to mention, which is another nice little feature, we said trigger guard. Unlike some of the PCPs out there, you have got a metal trigger guard, you've got a metal trigger, and even the safety itself isn't a piece of plastic. You've got more metal there as well. So, speaking of triggers, let's flick that off and let's give that a go. Let me see, there's a piece of wood here. Probably going to miss because the gun's not zeroed in. In fact, I've got no idea what this parallax is set to. She's on 30 yards, it would seem, the standard. So let's whack that back a bit so I can at least see the piece of wood. And let's just give that trigger a quick squeeze. That feels like second stage. My God, that's quiet. We're going to have to, chronograph section could be interesting because that is ridiculous. But the thing that I do quite like about that is that the trigger is very predictable. If I just whack that back 2 seconds, hang on, just going to get something off the table at this moment in time. There we go. Hopefully I haven't rocked the camera too much. Okay, so little finger, point that towards that box. Hopefully you can see this. Bring it back a little bit for you. So about there, that is the second stage. If we give that a little pull, you can see there, it hits that wall, off it goes. That is a very crisp trigger. There's a tiny little bit of notchiness in the first stage. You might have been able to see that. Hang on, let's try that again. Tiny little bit of notchiness. You can see that there, it's a not a smooth pull. But the second stage brakes, that's probably one of the cleanest brakes I've ever felt on a PCP, and I'm not just saying that. That is a lovely bit of kit. The bolt action is also really nice and smooth. You can see there's a little bit of a click as it loads the pellet into the breech. This is not a rare thing. A lot of PCPs do that, but the action itself is lovely. What I will say is that this rifle, because the magazine cycles itself, there's not the action cycling the gun, you can double load, so do be careful with that. Now, when it comes to the acoustics of the gun, I'm going to shut up now and you just have a little listen to this. Right, now to do the ultimate test. I've now got the, as you can see, hopefully I've got the lapel mic just there. I'm going to put this as close as I can to the barrel without potentially, it's pointed over there to that log pile, without potentially shooting myself. So, have a listen. Almost nothing. The loudest sound that you're getting out of this, there's a tiny little ping in the action and the piece of wood we just killed. That's it. But overall, handling wise, that is a lovely, lovely bit of kit. Let's give that another go, that trigger. Right, so let's take a look. Second stage, right there. Off she goes. That, handling wise, is a nice gun. Bear in mind, like we said, it's not a featherweight, it is well balanced, so if you're looking for something a bit lighter, obviously this might not be your cup of tea, but it's definitely not a heavyweight at the same time. It literally sits straight down the center. Overall, yeah, I'm a very happy chappy. Mag seems to be cycling fine, bolt is nice, trigger is bloody gorgeous, and no plastic to be seen anywhere, which is great. Obviously you've got this adjustable cheek piece as well, which I've set up at the moment for this scope, and yeah, it's bob on. So that is handling out the way. Next up, let's move on to the chronograph test, and let's see if this is only being very quiet like that because it's only doing about 4 foot-pounds. You never know. So let's get the chrono out and see what we think. Okay, so chronograph time. Rifle's prepped and ready on the left. She's at absolute max fill, which on this gun is 200 bar. Every now and again, with a regulated gun, if you fill it to max, you can get 1 or 2 hot shots as the air sort of seeps into the reg, but we'll see if it's the same with this. we have the phone set up here. The phone's plumbed in with the Coldwell Chronograph application. Obviously that's the chrono on the left there. And we're going to be using the Air Arms Diablo Field 4.2 grain pellets. Now, as always, we're going to be looking for power, consistency, and maximum shot count. So let's see what the Orion SPR can do. Okay, so chronograph report, what do we think? Well, taking a look at it, it's done pretty damn well. As we said, with the first maximum refill, you're going to get a couple of hot shots, so you might not be able to see it. I don't think the camera can quite. If I just come down a bit, you can see there's an 11.91 there. We had a couple of 11.8s, but then after a while, they sort of fizzled out, as you can see. And that regulator, excuse me, actually started really settling in. You can see there is another 11.91. The other thing to bear in mind is these are pellets straight from the tin. These aren't weighed or anything like that. And also, when it comes to shot count, the rifle, it went up to around 100 full power shots per fill. Now I say around because it does start going down, but you're still at 11 plus feet-pounds. It only really starts giving up. When we got to the 102nd shot, I thought, look, we're never coming back from that, no matter what. It might have been a heavy pellet, but considering you can see it's on the downward spiral at this moment in time anyway, I think that's pretty much what we can say and cut. But around 100 full power shots out of the... This is the short barrel Orion as well, not even the long barrel with the longer air cylinder. It's pretty impressive. I think it's, with 100 shots, obviously you can use it as a range gun, but for hunting, that's pretty much going to be ideal. You're never going to run out of those. Overall consistency-wise, the standard deviation, for the most part, I mean, it's at 10 now because we shot it until it was giving up, but overall standard deviation throughout most of the shot count, forgive me if I'm wrong, was around, I think, the 4.5-4 feet per second per shot range, which is pretty damn good. And the spread throughout most of it was around 25 FPS, and still it gradually, gently started coming down. And when it comes to gently coming down, I don't think it gets any more gentle than this. If you can see this, 11.26, 11.47, 11.29, 11.26, 11.26, 11.29, 11.29. Well, I'll put it this way, it's the regulator's definitely doing its job, even when the poor thing can't regulate enough air. But you've overall, like we said, is she still doing above 11 feet-pounds with 100 shots going through, or just about 11 feet-pounds. So she is pretty much a dead-on 100 shots per fill gun, which is pretty good. But that's chronograph testing out of the way. Next up, we're going to move on to the accuracy section. Now, we're going to do things a little bit differently this time, so I'm going to let you into a little secret. This is actually my second time filming this review because the GoPro, in all of it, GoPro, in all of its techno wizardry and cleverness, decided to basically corrupt all the files that we did the first time around. So, and yes, this is also the second chronograph test that we've done, so that's time I'm never going to get back. But we're going to do the accuracy section a little bit different this time, and let me set up the range and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so accuracy testing time now, and what we have in front of us here is actually a selection of pellets in a certain order. Now, excuse me, you may remember that when we did the chronograph section, we said that we had already done this review once, but the camera messed up. Well, I got about as far as the accuracy testing segment. So what I'm going to do is actually skip ahead a little bit here, but just sort of explain for you guys which pellets were good, which pellets were mediocre, and which pellets were bad. Now, you can probably tell when I show you the order which one's which already. Now, up top, these are the kind of rubbishy ones, to be fair. Now, the Wasps, unfortunately today, didn't do us a whole lot of good. Sometimes we've had some freak groupings with these where they've been wonderful, but not today. The Pro Shots were not good. The Norikas and the Remington Express are more or less the same pellet anyway. The plinking pellets, you got the SMK Blacks, which are also a bit pants, and the BSA Storm pellets, which, while they look like they're made very, very well, unfortunately just did not group at all. Almost, well, it's hard to say group when every pellet is a flyer. I'll put it that way. Again, not knocking these pellets. In some barrels, I'm sure they work perfectly. Unfortunately, didn't work in this one very well. Moving further down, we've got the mediocre section. Now, these is where we had a bit of a tight cluster, but you just get that occasional flyer going off. Sniper Magnums, crazy heavy, about 15 grains. Bit more velocity, might have been a bit better, but weren't grouping all that well. Well, mediocre. The Crossman Premier, these are the Magnum domes, I believe, which are 10.5 grains in 177. Heavy old pellet, but didn't actually do too badly, to be honest. Then we've got the QYS, which were acceptable. You could probably hunt with them, but I wouldn't go much further than, say, 30 yards. And the JSB Hades, which loaded as smooth as silk, but unfortunately we had a couple of flyers with those as well. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Look at the amount of pellets it bloody grouped well with. Now, I'm going to narrow this down a little bit if I can, or skip ahead so as the review's not bloody an hour long. But rifle dome field pellets. These surprise me because PCPs, usually wasted pellets, don't work that well, but these were pretty much nigh on pellet. The Sniper Lights, also a big surprise, not wasted, but they're more of a spring gun pellet, if anything. They're only sort of mid-7 grains. Most PCPs don't group well with these, although we did have success with the M16s with them, but they group very well here. Barracuda Match, heavy old pellet again, 10.65 grain, but did group pretty damn well. Slightly further down, we've got the new Normas, the Norma Golden Trophies. Now, these group pretty good. You've got the Rifle Premium Flatheads. We did have where's the domes? Never mind. I did have the domes here. Believe it or not, they didn't group as well as the flatheads did. This is also really interesting. These are the RWS Hyper Matches. Now, these are lead-free, which I thought, going off what other lead-free sort of pellet tests have done back in the day, admittedly, maybe they perfected the whole lead-free thing now. I thought there was going to be pants at anything above, say, 30 yards. No, genuinely very accurate. Just be careful if you do shoot these because they will come back at you. Air Arms Diablo Field. Usually a pretty damn good pellet, and it was the same here. And the good old Super Domes, there's something about these Cometa barrels and RWS pellets, were also pellet on pellet. Now what we're going to do, come up a bit for you, you might see there's a white board just down there. Now it's not quite the 40-yard mark, we're going to skip the 25 yards today. Might be a mistake because although it's calmed down a bit, it is really quite, I hope you can see that there, quite gusty today. But that's at about, we've brought this back a bit to make up the range a bit more as well. It's resting up against that bucket, which is probably around the 35, 37-ish yards mark, considering the table's further back as well. And we're going to take some shots into that white board. You'll notice there's a few pellet holes all over the place anyways, where we've had a few shots. But I'll pick a bit where it's nice and clean so we can have a few shots with these. We'll see if we can do 5 shots each and see which one comes out on top. Now, I will be rested, and we will be using the multi-shot mag. Now, one little bit of trivia for you. We forgot to mention the single shot tray. Now, I don't have one on me at the minute, but how you use that, it's a little bit of a faff, if I'm honest. You might remember on the other side of this breech, there's a bar. You might be able to see that there going across, which is what the jaws of the mag bite into to hold it in place. Great idea, stops you losing your mags of a night time and out hunting because it's almost locked in place. What you do, take that bar and you put it on this side, and the single shot tray is like it's like a disc that hooks into that bar, and then you can swing it out, load a pellet, close it back through. Bit of a faff. The good news is, however, you can actually load the pellets into this gun straight into the breech. The breech, you can see, is quite wide, and even with my somewhat bigger hands, I can just grab the pellet, feed it in, close the bolt. Job done. But we're going to be using the mag for this, as that's what most people are going to be using anyway. So 35, 37-ish yards, probably should have just said 36. Accuracy test, rested off the door of the Explorer backpack. Let's see which pellet comes out on top. Okay, so accuracy testing results, what do we think? Well, we had to make a couple of little changes. By a couple, I mean, it was one really. I had to put the stake in front of the piece of wood, the target holding spike. We've used it a few times on this channel before, and the reason for that is because I was quite frightened about the lead-free pellets coming back, or like they was doing a little bit the first time we did the review, just leaving a dent in the wood, which made it hard to see, because you might have seen the wood was leaning back just a little bit. So I stood it up and used that to wedge it up. Unfortunately, it was all sort of a bit wasted because they gave us the worst group out of all of them. I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks like this, oh no, he's in there. I was gonna say, it looks like this one even did still try to come back. It's still not god awful. I mean, it would almost sit under a 5p piece, but you have got this little sucker that just looked like he was completely blown off. The other thing to pay attention to as well, you might be able to see the wind is still blowing quite a bit, and at that range it would definitely seem as though the science has proven that your lighter pellet will bleed energy off a lot quicker than a heavier pellet will. It won't carry its momentum, and you can see here it's pretty much the only pellet that is, you can see the skirts are poking straight through, so that flat head maybe with these was acting like a great big air brake. First group we did was with the air arms pellets, and this is what the rifle was zeroed with as well, and you can see there that is pretty much top notch. Granted, had to pick shots through the wind, and you might notice there's a few delays between each group we did. Obviously I'm having to load the bloody magazine each time. Next after that we did the H&N Barracuda, which you can see here, HM Remington Barracuda, and put the 5p piece. Still pretty good. Now, like I said, you can tell, you can see the drop between them. They're a heavy old pellet, but they are an accurate one in most of the barrels I've tried them in, and you can see it here. In fact, if I was to take shots longer range, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't actually group even tighter than the air arms. Next group was the sniper lights, where again the lightweight was starting to move against us a little bit. They did pretty good though. We got a nice 3-shot cluster here, one shot just off to the left, and another one here way off to the left. I think it was taken by the wind. Slightly further along, after that we had, what did we have? I think it was the rifle field domes, which you can see, and once again almost a 5p group. We had one shot just went a little bit high, which was unfortunate, but other than that pretty damn good given the conditions. And moving slightly further along, now this is where things get interesting. These are the rifle premium match flatheads, where you've got 4 shots it looks like in a line here, unless, oh no wait, hang on, bear with me. Yeah, no, that's right, we've got 4 shots in a line here with one going low. Now I didn't expect that, but that also fits under a 5p piece. Further along we have the good old super domes, and I always like it when the super domes do well. Good old school pellet that in my opinion is heavily underrated today. We've got a really nice 5-shot cluster now. We have one pellet going high, but the other 4 are sitting in a really nice little group there. High pellet could be me. Obviously it looks like it's to the right here. It's because you should be looking at it like this. The high pellet could have been me, could have been the gun, could have been the pellet, who knows. Then finally we had the Normas. Put the 5p piece next to the Normas. The group, other than the flyer, is actually bigger than the super domes, which again, that could have just been unlucky, or maybe the wind was worse. But it still grouped really nicely, and I think it's almost under, it's just about under a 5p piece. Might be 20p. No, that's a 5p group. So accuracy wise, even in these conditions, which are not letting up at all, I'm going to say that this is a bloody accurate gun. I'm a little bit upset about the lead-free pellets. I was hoping we might have found some that finally grouped, but in these conditions anyway, not great. In the sun, when we did it originally, they were genuinely pretty superb though. So that's it for accuracy testing. I'm a very happy chappy, but we need to put this all together now and come up with our final verdict and see just what we really think about the Cometa Orion SPR. Okay, so the Cometa Orion SPR regulated, what do we think? As we always say, no rifle is perfect. There are pros and cons to everything. So as we always do, we're going to go over with the cons first, which is a little bit difficult to do because it's actually a very, very well-rounded rifle. It's a bit like, I know I keep comparing it to it, but it is like the Air Arms S410. There's very little with it you can nitpick. It's just a very well-designed gun. What I will say is although you don't have to use it, you can just thumb the pellets in straight through the breech. If I just bring that up close, you can see she's pretty wide in there, pretty forgiving. The single shot tray that you can get with this is a little bit awkward to use. You can see there the other side, you can see there's that bar going through, and you can see the 2 screw holes on this side of the action where you can move that bar, and that's basically, you put that bar there and screw it in, and that's how you then attach the single shot tray. It's like a disc that you pull out, put a pellet in, then close it, and then off you go. Bit of a faff with that, but is what it is. If you're only going to be doing single shot target shooting, you're into that sort of thing, I don't suppose it would bother you, but I personally would rather keep it in the mag setup and make it so as you can just thumb a pellet in every now and again. Other than that, I'm just trying to think, was there anything else that I'm forgetting that I didn't really... Oh, the pressure gauge is on the business end. Unfortunately, you do have to look almost through your barrel to get to the gauge. Hopefully I can reach out far enough for you to see that there. Bit of a faff, but even then, if you don't like that, you can get the unregulated version of this rifle where the pressure gauge is right there, just in front of the trigger blade and trigger guard itself, which is a lovely touch. The shot count on this thing is pretty good for a standard cylinder unregulated gun. The cylinder itself is actually quite small as well, if you can see that. Shot count wise, we had around 100 full power shots before it started, or I got the feeling it was going to start dipping below the 11 feet-pounds range. The rifle, again, pay no attention to the spread of 45 there. I think the main spread was around 25-ish FPS, 30 FPS. Again, bear in mind this is a rifle straight out the box, so it has got some running in to do. And the regulator you've got with the gun is one of the best on the market, the Robert Lane reg. The other thing I'm going to mention is the accuracy, of course. That's why you'd buy a rifle like this. And if I just pan it across now, you can see, if you remember, top left group is the Air Arms group that we did. This is at about 37 yards with some pretty rough wind. Not atrocious, but not the best. You can see the overall rifle group's pretty damn well, almost no matter what you give it. The exception being the poor lead freeze, which I bigged up and then they let us down when we started recording because they were shooting bloody well the other day when it was calm, but did not like the wind at all. But overall, it is a bloody accurate gun, it's got to be said. The trigger on it is lovely. Hopefully you could see there, it's got a very nice and light first stage, and the second stage is you get a little bit of resistance, you feel it stop, and then off she goes. It is a nicely set up trigger, and if you don't like the way it is out the box, it's easy to adjust as well. You've got them 2 adjustment screws in the trigger blade itself, and you can get to them, as you can see, through the trigger guard. Speaking of trigger guards and such, the overall build of the rifle I'm a big fan of. There's very little plastic anywhere. The trigger is metal, the trigger guard is metal, and this is what I'm starting to like about Cometa. They do seem to put metal where it mostly needs to be, with the exception of the Fusion for some reason and the 400s. I've got no idea why they've done that. The stock is lovely to shoulder. The checkering is nice and deep. I like the fact you've got the Orion logo sort of finished in there as well, which is quite eye-catching when you see it in the flesh. And the cheek piece as well is lovely to use and lefty friendly. In fact, the entire gun is. Even the safety will be really easy to access for a lefty, and the safety itself is also metal, which is again another really nice touch there. This is the short version. You can get the long version as well. I think personally this gun, and another reason why I'm a little bit soft on it, is because it's a hunting gun, it's a work tool, it's not a cabinet queen. If you want something that's going to be more suited for target shooting, you can get the extended version of this gun, so you're going to have a bit more air efficiency with the longer barrel, and you've got the longer air cylinder to go with it, so you will get more shots. Maybe this with 100 shots per fill, you might get a bit tired filling it at the range, but it's not atrocious, but it's worth mentioning. So as we say, I pretty much answered this already. Who's this gun going to suit and who is this not going to suit? Hunters, absolutely. I think this particular version of this gun is set up pretty much for you guys out the box. The trigger is perfect for hunting. You've got a very lovely crisp second stage unit on there, or 2-stage unit. It comes as standard with the swivel, so you can fit a sling to it straight away, or you can fit a bipod on the front end if you want to. The gun itself isn't the lightest, but it's not heavy at all. It's a very well balanced bit of kit that will feel slightly lighter than what it comes out on the scales. And accuracy wise, you're going to be capable of dispatching pretty much everything that you want to take down at whatever range you're pretty much comfortable with. Power wise, it's also definitely, it's healthy, we'll put it that way. When they say full power, they mean it with the Orion. But overall, yeah, it's a cracking gun. Like we said, for target shooters, I would recommend maybe the longer barrel model. That will probably suit you better. So I'm a very happy chappy with this. I think the Orion is a great bit of kit, and it's a good looking thing as well. It's traditional, but you've got that nice cheek piece on there too. It's a great looking, feeling, shooting and handling gun. And to top it all off, if anything does go wrong with it, and it's not that, you have a bloody lifetime warranty to back you up with it as well. So as we said before, I know it's cheesy, but it is true. It's not a gun for a couple of years. The Cometas, it would seem, are guns for life. So take that however way you want. But thanks ever so much for watching. I do apologise how long it's taken to get this review out here. You know, we wanted to get them out more frequently. The weather's been atrocious and we have been bloody busy, I'll put it that way. But not complaining about that. So thanks ever so much for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.